How's it going, guys? My name is Marcus, and today I'm going to teach you guys how to write just this simple web page in HTML, CSS, and like 3 lines of JavaScript. So up top we have a navbar with just a simple hover effect on it, a button right here with a hover effect on it, and then if we hop into a smaller screen size, um, I took the image out, but it looks like that, and then we have a navbar that opens from the right with the same list items on it as in the big screen. Now, if you want to see me just rip this out and not really talk about it, I have a video uploaded that's just me writing the code, but this is going to be maybe a little bit more in depth. I'm just going to narrate it. I won't really explain why I'm doing what I'm doing though. Okay, so to start, just open up your text editor. I use VS Code, but any text editor works. And then go ahead and create a file called index.html and another one called style.css. In the index.html file, we'll create a HTML boilerplate. Super easy to do on VS Code. Just exclamation point plus the tab button. And then we're going to edit the title of the document to be my portfolio and then add a home attribute to it. And then from there, we're going to go and add a link to the CSS page by doing rel equals style sheet and href equals style.css. Okay, so from here, I'm just going to start writing the body of the HTML file. So hop inside the body tag. And then I'm going to create a div with class name banner and then another div with class name navbar. From there, I'm going to add the nav tag for the navbar itself and then create an unordered list inside of there, which is basically just a unnumbered list. Okay, so then create list item, add an anchor tag within there so that we know that it is so that the HTML file knows that it's a hyperlink. Add an href attribute within the anchor tag, and then for now we're just going to leave that guy empty, but we'll be building that out later as this project progresses. So then I'm just going to copy this entire line a couple of times to create our navbar, and then change the list items from home to about, skills, and projects. Okay, so now we're going to want to see what we're actually writing here. So go ahead and find the folder where you saved the HTML file and open it. That'll just launch your default browser. You can see that we have our unordered list that we wrote right there on the left. Okay, so now hop back into your text editor and then open up the CSS file. We're just going to add some margin, padding, and font family for the entire document, which is indicated by the star. Okay, so now I'm just going to open the CSS file on this side just to make it a little bit easier. And then we're just going to start writing the CSS for that navbar. So we're going to start with the banner tag, basically just adding some basics right now. We're just dealing with the background image, and so right now we're overlaying the background image with just black transparency, and that basically just makes the background pop a little bit less so that it's more of a background and less of a, I guess, foreground. Okay, so now we can see that we have our background added with the linear gradient overlaid. Okay, so now we're just going to keep building out the banner slash header of our website. So we're just going to add a h3 tag with portfolio inside of it, and then add a span tag in the middle of the port and folio in order to make that word 2 different colors. Okay, now hopping back to the CSS file. So we call out the span tag, and then we're going to use this color code to make the second half of the portfolio word that color, and then we're going to go ahead and just style the rest of our banner. So now we're adding the white color to the portfolio words and just styling that in general, making it bigger and translating it up a little bit. Okay, so now if we hop back into our web browser, you can see what we just wrote, and we have our nice portfolio in 2 different colors. Okay, so now that we've tackled the logo, we're gonna start working on the navbar itself. So let's hop back into the CSS file, write nav ul for the nav and unordered list, and then we're just gonna start styling this a little bit, just adding some margin and some text aligned to it. Okay, so now continuing on, displaying as an inline block will change the list from a vertical list to a horizontal list. I'm going to add some padding on the left just to space out our list items a little bit better. And then now we're finally getting into stylizing the text on the nav ULLIA. So this is where we will add font color, font size, and any sort of text decoration. And then adding cursor pointer. Okay, so now hopping back into the web browser, we can see that our navbar is looking much better over on the right hand side, displayed horizontally. Alright, so now that we have our navbar stylized a little bit better, let's go ahead and add the hover effect to it. So I'm going to write .navbar, ULLI, and the after selector, and so this is basically, we're just setting up the little slight animation of the line underneath the nav bar when we hover above it right now. Okay, and then we're going to add transition of 0.5 seconds so that our animation is a little bit smoother and more drawn out. And now we're writing the same set of tags with the hover selector and the after selector. And then this is basically just setting the width to 100% when you hover over it so that the after selector that we just wrote is actually visible. And there it is. Alright, so now that we have that top navbar section looking good, let's go ahead and jump into the main body section of our website. So come outside of the navbar div, still within the banner div though, and then create a new div with class name row. And then within this div, we're going to create another div with class name call/1 for column 1. Okay, so within this div, we're going to add an h5 tag, and within that, we're just going to write my name is, and whatever your name is, I'm just going to use John Appleseed for this one, and that's going to be within the h2 tag right below our h5 tag. Okay, so below all of this, we're going to add an H4 tag saying I am a web developer or whatever you are, obviously. Um, and my use of tags here is a little bit excessive. To be honest, I don't know if I needed to use three different header tags. Okay, so below that, we're gonna write an anchor tag for our button, href, just leave it blank for now, and then we're gonna add a class name of btn, and then text within the anchor tag of hire me. So this is gonna be our main button. Okay, jumping back to the web browser, we can see what we just wrote. It's not visible right now because of the black background. All right, so now let's just go ahead and stylize um, that first column that we just wrote. So hop back into your CSS file and then write .call/1 for the first column class name, and then we're just gonna add some margin. And then just overall just positioning it so that it is over on the left hand side where we want it. Okay, so now we're calling out the individual header tags that we just used and making these white or whatever color so that we can see them. Making it a little bit bigger with font size of 32 pixels. And then just going to do the same thing with the other header tags, making the font sizes the appropriate, um, yeah, sizes, I guess. Okay, so hopping back into our browser, we can see how this looks now. And we can see that everything is looking good except for the button. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and tackle the button. This one's a bit of a pain, but it's all CSS. So hop back into the CSS file. And we're just going to start by adding some just margin and then display it as inline block. That'll again make it display horizontally versus vertically. And then text decoration none, adding white color so that the text within the button is white. And then adding that border is just going to add the thin little border that we have around the button. Okay, so padding and font size next. And then now we're going to make the background transparent so that it's the same color as, just so that it's transparent. Okay, so now cursor pointer, so that when we hover over it, we have the pointer cursor, and then now we're going to add that little hover effect that makes the button kind of fill in that goldish color when we hover over it. So we're just using this same color chord across everything right now. Every effect and everything on this front page just has this B47C2D color chord. Okay, so we're looking good. Now we're going to add a transition to it so that it's, again, a little bit more drawn out. We're going to go 1 second on this one, and then now we're going to see how it looks. Okay, so the button's looking good, and when we hover over it, we have that nice little 1 second transition. Okay, so now that we have all that looking good, let's go ahead and add the image of our man. Now this one's a bit tricky because I wasn't able to add the actual image because I have to attribute the owner of the image. But so basically, I have the image scaled at 723 by 853 pixels, and then I just had to remove the background from it. But besides that, it's the same image that's linked in the description. Okay, so in the HTML file, we created a new div with class name column2, added the image of the man, and then now we're just going to the CSS file, styling this a little bit, just pushing it over to the right a little bit by adding some margin from the left, and then by making the width 50%, that scales the dude down so that he doesn't take up the whole web page at that 723 by 853 size. Okay, then again, we're just adding some simple margin and transforming it a little bit so that it's on the web page where we want it. And if we refresh the web page, we can see that he is over on the right hand side and things are looking good. All right, so that's it in terms of the main page. Now we just need to make it responsive. So if we hop into a smaller screen size here, we can see that things are just a mess, especially that picture. And so I did just go ahead and remove the picture for a smaller device, just for the sake of simplicity on this video. To make it responsive, let's hop back into the CSS file, drop down a line, and then add a media query. So this basically, by setting that max width to 700 pixels, that'll be any device with basically screen size of width of under 700 pixels, then whatever we're writing within this media query basically will take effect. But if the device is over 700 pixels, it will not. Okay, so basically just doing some basics here, making sure the background size is the full screen, and then like I said, we did go ahead and hide that image completely just for just to make the video a bit shorter and simpler. Okay, so from here it's basically just adding a little bit of margin, just aligning things on the center, and then adjusting font sizes a little bit, and things get a little bit hairier once we go ahead and add the toggles and the JavaScript for the menu. But for here it's basically just we're repositioning stuff a little bit. Okay, so here we're writing the navbar. We basically just added a background to the whole thing so that it appears better on small devices. And then we push it over to the right, so that's basically gonna hide it when, basically unless that JavaScript toggle is clicked on. Okay, so we're writing just basically the CSS, setting up for the little animation on the navbar right now by adding that transition. Okay, so now we need to just basically style the navbar a little bit more, basically display it vertically and just fix things up a little bit better before we can write the JavaScript. Okay, now hopping back into the browser, we can see that overall things are looking much better, except for that portfolio. We're gonna just need to translate that down, probably about 50 pixels. But besides that, things are looking good. Okay, now we have to add basically the link and the font itself to change the font up a little bit. I'm gonna go ahead and fast forward this part because it's basically just me writing a gnarly long URL and then just adding a font style at the top of the CSS document. Okay, now that we have things looking better with that little bit thinner and just I don't know, I like that font a little bit better. Let's go ahead and just continue setting things up for the JavaScript. So here we're just gonna add basically font awesome icons to close and open the menu. Again, we're gonna have to write another stupid gnarly long URL here. So you can either copy my URL or you can go into Font Awesome and basically create your own kit. You get one for free, and then you'll have basically your own unique URL that you can use. Okay, so now we're adding the icon to open the menu, just font awesome bars. And do pay attention to where those are placed. The X is within the navbar div, and the bars are outside. That's important. Okay, so now we're in the CSS file, and we're basically just gonna style these font awesome icons. They're basically treated as just text, and so you can change the size of them with font size or, yeah. So we've gone ahead and added a little bit of margin and padding to both the bars and the X. And now let's go ahead and hop back into our browser to see how things are looking. Okay, looking good. We need to translate it down a little bit, but overall, and there's our nav bar, things are looking much better. All right, now we're finally onto the fun part. So after adding a few more attributes, we need to translate that down. So add a negative in front of that margin from the top on the nav bar. That'll fix the portfolio. That'll move that up or down accordingly. And then, so now we need to go back to our font awesome icons within the HTML file and add a on-click attribute to both of these. Show menu on the bars and hide menu on the times. And then again, we're basically just setting things up so that we can write the JavaScript here in just a moment. And then adding an ID attribute to the navbar, again for the JavaScript. Okay, so now come all the way down to the very end of your body tag, still within the body tag though, and then create a script tag, and here we're writing the JavaScript. So basically, I'm not going to explain this. This is just super basic JavaScript, but basically creating a variable called navlinks, and then we're just basically writing JavaScript so that we have that short little animation when we click on the bars and the times. Now I did have a typo there. That ID, the get element by ID, the D in ID should be lowercase. So this is not going to run, and I'm sure that'll take me a second to figure that one out. Okay, so now we're creating our first function. This is for the bars, the show menu function, and that's basically just gonna, when we click on the bars, it will move the nav links over to the left by 200 pixels. And then the hide menu is just gonna basically push it over to the right by 200 pixels, and that's where we have it by default right now, the negative 200 pixels to the right. Okay, so hopping back in, we can see that it will not work because of that typo. But once we hop back in and change that D to a lowercase, and obviously save our HTML file, things should work better. And then I messed up here. We're gonna have to get rid of that negative to basically translate the logo back to where it should be. And then now we can see when we click on both of these icons, the appropriate transition takes place. Okay, so things are looking good. We have fully responsive and yeah, nice little JavaScript transition added to the navbar. All right, guys, thank you so much for watching. If you want to see this, just me ripping through the code, like I said, I'm going to link that right now. Please like and subscribe to the video. It really helps me out. And yeah, thank you so much for watching.